I'm here to tell you about an incredible opportunity for Ireland, for business, for tourism and for culture. Along the way, you'll also learn about your sovereign rights and about sovereignty itself. As a primary school teacher, I'm gravely concerned about the education of our people, about their history. We're going to take on a journey today through the streets of Dublin to visit some memorials and sites that have been hidden and neglected by our government and by the establishment. The question you need to ask yourself is, why? Firstly, I'm here at the site of the O'Rahilly House. Michael O'Rahilly, a Kerry native, one of our finest, one of our bravest, a visionary. Several meetings were held here at this house in preparation for the organisation of the 1916 Rising. Indeed, the likes of Pearse and Connolly themselves would have gathered here to plan the insurrection. The reason why you can't see the house behind this barrier here is because it was demolished. It was destroyed, obliterated. Now, some of our civil servants will say it was a mistake, an accident. Well, I'd put it to them, if that is the case, then why did these bulldozers enter these premises in the dead of night, under the cover of darkness, to demolish this building? If that's the case, then why was a preservation order not in place already on this house? Our history is being sanitised right beneath our noses. And we'll prove this to you, and we'll show you the motive today. I do want to thank you in advance for watching this video, the purpose of which is to inform you that you're being deceived about your history. Why? Our history is full of inaccuracies and illogical fallacies. The most obvious example is An Gcúirte Mór, or the Great Hunger, or commonly referred to as the famine. 170 years after the most tragic event in our history, do people still really actually believe that we lost 2 million people because of potatoes? Do people think we lost 2 million of our people, while as an island nation we're surrounded by fish in our seas, our lakes and rivers teeming with fish, our fields and pastures waiting to be planted with other crops, or grain to make bread? Or what about the 12,000 strong garrison that the British Army had to guard the ports of Ireland, with their sole purpose to keep away the starving Irish from getting at the foods that were being put on British ships bound for Britain and beyond? To call it a famine is simply a lie. It was genocide. To find out the actual truth, I would encourage you all to read Chris Fogarty's book about the Holocaust, the Irish Holocaust. Were you taught about the Irish that were sold into slavery, such as the Black Irish of Montserrat? Or what about the orphan girls who were stripped from the arms of their siblings while their parents' bodies were still warm in their graves, having died of disease or of hunger, and then shipped off to Australia as servant girls for the gentry or for the aristocracy, and then inevitably married off to these old men of the gentry or of the aristocracy? You simply have to do the maths, folks. 8 million people minus the 2 million people of the Great Hunger leaves 6 million people, yet our population went to 4 million. Were you taught about your sovereignty? It's referred to 3 times in the Proclamation of 1916. But what does it mean? Well, it means you're born with no masters, that no government has control or power over us, that governments and civil servants are accountable to us, not the other way around. Indeed, the Sovereign Constitution in 1919 provided for a system of direct democracy, which allowed the people to instigate or object laws. The sovereign Dáil Éireann TDs were accountable at the time. They were accountable to the people. They had to take an oath of allegiance to swear to be accountable to the people. This is what Michael O'Rahilly and the other men and women of 1916 died for. Our sovereignty. Is this what has transpired today? So come along with us today now on this journey, and we'll visit these sites and these historic buildings that have been deliberately airbrushed from history. So much so to the point that the majority of Irish people do not even know that we have an Independence Day.
Hi, my name is Kathleen.
And I'm Barra.
And today we're going to be taking you on a whistle-stop tour of Dublin to teach you about your hidden Irish history.
And teach you about your sovereign rights. Will we go?
Let's go.
This is one of the most historically important buildings in the country, yet barely recognisable. This is formerly Vaughan's Hotel here on 29 Granby Row, Parnell Square in Dublin. This was the general headquarters of the Irish Republican Brotherhood and a very important meeting place for the Republican movement. It was purchased by the Maguire family in 1917 from the Vaughan family in preparation for the 1918 All-Ireland 32 county general election, in which IRB Sinn Féin had a landslide victory, winning 73 out of 105 seats. The Sovereign Constitution of 1919 was written here. The Sovereign Republic of Éire was planned here, along with the first Dáil Éireann and the Dáil Éireann courts. Underground tunnels ran from Vaughan's Hotel throughout the city and were very, very important to the Irish Republican Brotherhood and the Republican movement in general. Indeed, Michael Collins himself availed of these tunnels to evade capture by the British authorities. The War of Independence, of course, was also planned here. A nice little side story is the story of the Russian crown jewels, which ended up being kept here and minded here in this particular building, in Vaughan's Hotel. So how did they end up here? Well, the first sovereign Dáil gave a loan of £20,000 to the Russian government. And in return, or as security, the Russian crown jewels were sent here and kept safely. They were returned in the end on payment of the loan. Now, as you can see, the building is quite dilapidated. It was gutted by none other than Hugh Coveney and the contents sold. However, in fairness to Hugh Coveney, it's said that he later regretted that decision. The Vaughan Papers, which contains valuable historical information regarding that particular period of our history, were given to Limerick University on loan to Maurice Manning. Since then, those papers have gone missing. Or is it just a case that somebody's refusing to return them? What are they keeping from us? What are they hiding? On the 100th anniversary of the 1916 Rising, the Irish Defence Forces intended to come here and clean up the building. However, they were told to step down and desist by none other than Simon Coveney. Why? We're now at the second point of our tour, the Garden of Remembrance. Located behind the Rotunda, built in 1745, designed by Daithí Hanley, the Garden of Remembrance is one of the most popular sites in Dublin to relax among the hustle and bustle of city life. However, the historical significance of this site is quite often lost. For example, the volunteers, the Irish volunteers, were established here on this site in 1913. Indeed, some of the 1916 leaders were brought here after the conditional surrender and kept here overnight. The sculpture of the Children of Lear was added in 1971, sculpted by Oisin Kelly, and it symbolises rebirth and resurrection, which is very appropriate for our tour here today. We're here at the third stop on our tour, the Rotunda Hospital. Built in 1745, it's the oldest lying-in maternity hospital in Europe. In order to fund the hospital, entertainments were developed, specifically here on the south-easterly corner of Parnell Square, such as the Gate Theatre, the Ambassador and the Pillar Room. The tunnels that we spoke about that ran beneath Vaughan's Hotel also ran beneath Rotunda Hospital here. Indeed, after the evacuation of the GPO and the attempt of escaping from Moore Street, the rebels were intending to reach these underground tunnels to bring them to the safety of Vaughan's Hotel. After the conditional surrender, Republican prisoners were kept here on the grounds of the Rotunda Hospital. Indeed, that night proved quite fateful for one Captain Percival Lee Wilson, who essentially signed his death warrant that night. Why? He singled out a certain Thomas Clark, the oldest of the signatories of the proclamation, for particular harsh treatment. He was brought to the steps here at the front of the rotunda, stripped bare naked to the horror of the onlooking nurses, and was beaten and tortured, and then left in tattered clothes overnight in the cold. A young Michael Collins was present there that day and swore that he would exact revenge. Indeed, 4 years later, Collins sent 6 men down to County Wexford to assassinate Lee Wilson. When news of the assassination reached Collins in the Dublin Hotel, he's quoted as saying, "Finally, we have gotten him." We're here now at the 4th point of our tour, Moore Lane. On Saturday the 29th of April 1916, Patrick Pearse stood alongside Nurse Elizabeth O'Farrell and offered his conditional surrender to General William Lowe and Captain Harry de Courcy. Many of you might be familiar with that iconic image of the surrender, Pearse standing in front of the 2 British officers, obscuring Elizabeth O'Farrell to his right hand side. But if you look carefully at the image, you can see the bottom of her garments and her boots. However, in other images, Elizabeth O'Farrell has been simply airbrushed from that photograph. Likewise, many of our women have been airbrushed from our history. Why? Another question, where is the plaque gone that was erected up here, not by any government or government department, but by the people, that to commemorate this, the historical significance of this lane? Coincidental or deliberate? We're here now on Moore Street, stop number 5 on our tour. After the shelling of the GPO, the rebels evacuated and made their way through the back lanes here to Moore Street. And they entered apparently here at this building, number 5 Moore Street, formerly Dunn's Butchers. They began to tunnel through the walls, and their intention was to reach Parnell Street, the Rotunda Hospital, and to access the tunnels to get to the safe haven of Vaughan's Hotel. They made their way up as far as number 16 Moore Street. "16 Moore Street." But this is as far as the rebels could tunnel through the walls. Indeed, many rebels spent their final hours here at number 16. Their intention, as mentioned, was to reach the Rotunda Hospital, the tunnels below the Rotunda, to bring them to the safety of Vaughan's Hotel. However, the top of the street was cordoned off by British troops, a British cordon. Up stepped the O'Rahilly, who sought out volunteers to charge the British cordon, the famous O'Rahilly charge. Unfortunately, that charge wasn't so successful. The O'Rahilly lay wounded here in this laneway, now named O'Rahilly Parade, and was here in this lane. As he lay dying, he penned this letter to his wife, apparently in his own blood. The O'Rahilly died for Ireland, and as we now know, greedy developers, aided and abetted by unscrupulous civil servants, demolished his house in the dead of night. Just like the O'Rahilly house, these buildings just around the corner here on Moore Street, where we just were, are in danger of being demolished also, obliterated from our history. Again, another example of the sanitisation of our history. Thankfully, some Irish patriots have stepped forward and taken legal action to prevent these buildings being demolished. Yet it's a daily battle, a monthly battle, to protect these historic buildings. Would this be tolerated in any other country?
So now we come to point 6 on our walk-in tour today, the Jenny Wise Power plaque. So Jenny Wise Power ran a restaurant and shop here and lived above it. Now, she was a veteran of the nationalist movement herself. She was involved with the Ladies' Land League from 1881 when she was elected as a committee member of that organisation. And later she was involved in the foundation of Sinn Féin. She was a poor law guardian for North Dublin in 1903. Her shop and the restaurant were a frequent meeting place for the revolutionaries. So here, on Monday the 17th of April 1916, at the last formal meeting of the military committee, Pearse's draft of the proclamation was amended, agreed, signed and sealed by 6 of the Irish leaders. Now, Joseph Plunkett later signed and sealed the document. Thomas MacDonagh took it for safekeeping and later brought it to Liberty Hall for printing. Now, at this crucial meeting, they also agreed who should form the provisional government of the Irish Republic, to be held for the people until elected by suffrages of all her men and women. And an important point to note about this plaque is that it was erected by volunteers in 1991.
The GPO, Ardifig an Phoist, perhaps the most iconic image of the 1916 Easter Rising. It opened its doors on the 6th of January, Women's Christmas as we call it in Ireland, in the year 1818. Of course, it was the headquarters for the 1916 Rising. On Easter Monday, the 24th of April 1916, the Argentinian Eamon Bulfin, a former student of Patrick Pearse in St. Enda's, he hoisted the green flag of the Irish Republic above the GPO, alongside the Irish tricolour, which was a barely recognisable flag at that period of time in Dublin. At 4 minutes past 12, Pearse made his way out onto the facade and read aloud the proclamation of 1916. The proclamation is the foundation document of the Sovereign Republic of Ireland, which was mandated in the 1918 general election and ratified on the 21st of January 1919, our Independence Day. Why does our government commemorate the Easter Rising on Easter Sunday? Why do they not afford it the respect by commemorating it on the correct day, Easter Monday, or the 24th of April? And another question, why has no politician ever publicly read the proclamation at a commemorative event? Food for thought. Point number 8 of our walking tour. We're here on Marlborough Street, outside the Confession Box pub. Now, the name of this pub goes back to the War of Independence. During that time, the Catholic Church was excommunicating anyone involved in the struggle for independence. The Bishop Daniel Cahalan of County Cork was at the forefront of these excommunications. It's said that this pub here, or the Maid of Erin as it was known at the time, was used to administer communion and confessions to those who were excommunicated by sympathetic priests from the nearby Pro Cathedral here. Indeed, Michael Collins himself was said to have been a regular visitor. Because of these practices, it became known then as the confession box. Point number 9 on our walking tour is the Sean Tracy plaque above my head here. Sean Tracy, a name most synonymous with the War of Independence. Sean Tracy, the fearless Tracy, was a member of the 3rd Tipperary Brigade, which fired the first shots of the War of Independence at the Salahabeg ambush in South Tipperary on the 21st of January 1919, our Independence Day. He was killed here on Talbot Street on the 14th of October 1920 in a shootout with British authorities. Indeed, on that day, 2 British Secret Service agents were also killed. This plaque above my head was erected by members of the public. Again, not erected by any government or government department. I often ask myself, do other countries treat their fallen heroes in such a manner? Stop number 10 of our tour is here on Foley Street. This part of Dublin was Dublin's red light district, commonly known as the Monto. Here at number 134 was a public house by the name of Shanahan's. It was owned by a Tipperary man called Phil Shanahan. Now, this is quite an unusual meeting place for Republicans. It was frequented by British soldiers, Irish revolutionaries, prostitutes, and all sorts of people. The famous Dan Breen himself was a regular customer here, and he's quoted as saying that the prostitutes at night time would rob ammunition and guns from the auxiliaries and the black and tans, and then leave them here at this site, Phil Shanahan's pub, for the rebels. The tunnels that we spoke about that run around the city ran underneath Phil Shanahan's pub, and it was quite often a Republican would be approached and he'd be asked the question, "Can you tell me the way to Vaughan's Hotel?" And very quickly, soon afterwards, weapons, guns, ammunition, provisions, dispatches would be on their way through those tunnels on their way to Vaughan's Hotel. Stop number 11 on our tour. Unless on business here, very few people will notice this site. However, it's the site of perhaps the most important meeting in the history of our country. For on St. Patrick's Day here in 1858, at the home of Peter Lanigan, a timber merchant, James Stephens, Thomas Clark Luby, Joseph Deneve, Garrett O'Shaughnessy and Peter Lanigan himself gathered here to establish the Irish Republican Brotherhood. On that very same day, across the Atlantic Ocean, in New York, in O'Dohenny's pub, John O'Mahony established the Irish Fenian Brotherhood. The origins of the Irish Republican Brotherhood lies in the failed Young Irelanders Rebellion of 1848, in which O'Mahony and Stephens took part. Shortly afterwards, they fled to France. And it was here in Paris that their discussions sparked the next phase of the revolution. Only 60 years after their establishment, the IRB successfully established the Sovereign Republic of Eire with a landslide victory in the 1918 general election. stop number 12 on our tour. I'm here at the junction of Westland Row and Fenian Street. This is Oriel House. There's no fame, no glory associated with this particular building, but beatings, torture, terror, and death. It was built in 1872 and its infamy goes back to the Civil War. When the anti-treaty IRA had lost control of the four courts in central Dublin, they had to adopt a new tactic, and this was low-intensity guerrilla warfare, which proved very difficult to defend against. The Free State Army, still supported by Crown forces, had to adopt their own tactic. They arrested any activists who were opposed to the Free State. It was essentially internment. Now this plan failed, and they adopted another new tactic. When members of the Free State Army were attacked, they exacted revenge by arresting anyone who may have been responsible in that particular area. The Free State Army came to be as infamous, as murderous, as reckless as the Black and Tans themselves. In short, the Free State Army committed treason against its own population by destroying the democratically elected Sovereign Republic of Eire. To this day, Oriel House and its activities are shrouded in secrecy, so much so that it's impossible to locate any files on the work that they carried out. Why? What are they hiding from us? We're here now at the penultimate stop of our tour, Duke of Leinster House. It was formerly known as Kildare House because it was commissioned by the Earl of Kildare, James Fitzgerald, between the years of 1745 and 1747. It was changed its name when he became Duke of Leinster in 1776. In 1815 it was sold to the Royal Dublin Showgrounds, or the RDS. When the Free State was imposed in 1922, the provisional government leased some rooms here for parliamentary use. By 1924, the whole building in its entirety was leased. Nowadays, the Duke of Leinster House is the seat of the two houses of the Royal Oireachtas imposed by King George V. The sovereign Dáil Éireann has never sat in Leinster House. Allow me to say that again. The sovereign Dáil Éireann has never sat in Leinster House. This building is the seat of the Royal Oireachtas of King George V. Now let that sink in. Our final stop on today's tour is the Mansion House. It was built in 1710, and soon afterwards Dublin Corporation purchased it as the ongoing official residence of the Lord Mayor of Dublin. After the IRB Sinn Féin landslide victory in the 1918 general election, the first sovereign Dáil Éireann met here on the 21st of January 1919, our Independence Day. All proceedings were conducted in Irish. Father Michael Flanagan of Sinn Féin Vice President opened the proceedings with a prayer, and then Cathal Brugha was duly appointed as Ceann Comhairle. A roll call was then taken. 27 of the 73 Sinn Féin TDs were marked down as Iláthar, or present. Several others were marked in as Feiglas ag na Gaillimh, locked up by the foreigner, or Erdíbert ag na Gaillimh, deported by the foreigner. When the names of Michael Collins and Harry Boland were called out, somebody answered Iláthar. This was merely a diversionary tactic to divert British attention away from the fact that Collins and Boland were on their way to break Eamon de Valera out of Lincoln Jail in England. There was a light-hearted moment which sent ripples of laughter around the room when names such as Edward Carson and James Craig, the Unionists, were called out, who, of course, were marked down as Osláthar, absent. The Sovereign Constitution of 1919 was read out, as was the Declaration of Independence, which ratified the Irish Republic proclaimed in 1916. Another document, the message to the free nations of the world, was also read out. Each year on our Independence Day, the President of the Irish Republican Brotherhood, Mr. Billy Maguire, comes here and performs the turning of the sovereign seal, which is held in trust for the sovereign people of Éire. Will you be here next January for your Independence Day? So I hope this video has given you a better understanding of how and why our history is being sanitized and hidden from us. I hope it gives you a better understanding of what sovereignty is about, or at the very least sparks an interest to find out more about your sovereignty. If you've enjoyed what we've spoken about and what you've heard and what you've seen today, why not join us next year for our Independence Day on the 21st of January? It promises to be a family-friendly event full of entertainment and music and more. Keep an eye on competitions in schools for children. Have a look at our website, Ireland'sIndependenceDay.ie. Having watched this video, ask yourself, would this be accepted by any other country? More importantly, as the sovereign, are you going to accept it? Remember, every child is born sovereign, free from debt and entitled to the assets of the nation. These assets are held in trust for the sovereign people in perpetuity, and they cannot be sold unlawfully or given away or diminished because they belong to the Irish people. This is not what is happening today. Our national debt goes back to Britain's First World War debt, which the costs of were and still are to this day put on the head of the Irish people under the Consolidated Funds Act, which is still on the statute books. With sovereignty, however, comes responsibility. You are responsible for your own actions. Once you uphold the true principles of law, do no harm, cause no actual loss, commit no fraud. So I extend the invite again, the 21st of January next year. Step forward, accept and confirm your sovereignty. Every year since the 21st of January 1919, the right of the people of Ireland to the territory of Ireland and all of its assets has been maintained and sustained by the Irish Republican Brotherhood as trustees of the sovereign territory of Éire for the sovereign people of Éire. As I mentioned at the start of this video, this is an incredible opportunity for Ireland. I'll see you here on our Independence Day next year. Good Amila.
Ireland's Independence Day, the rhythm on the green. On the 21st of January in 1919, at 12 noon in the Mansion House, sovereign ones were seen. Éire declared her independence for all her living beings. Little did we know then the significance of these scenes. A mammoth day in history, not just for people here, as humanity struck out for freedom against the bloodlines who rule with fear. Éire, the heart of the world, calls all her children now, come alive to your true passion. Intuition will show you how. We've come here at this time on earth to demonstrate the way, to find that inner freedom humanity craves today. We've shown the world this way before, coming straight from source. Now let's dance with joy and freedom to take away the hurts. Show your love for Mother Nature, standing barefoot in the park, soaking up the powerful feelings designed to heal the heart. As you warm to these vibrations coursing through your being, Feel your dancing feet responding to the rhythm on the green. Spread love and joy throughout the world on this Independence Day. Then peace and love will be felt in this miraculous way. So dance this barefoot freedom, 70 million Irish in the world, inviting every human to join us as we twirl. Jigs and reels aplenty will join us in the park as joy and independence rises like the phoenix from this spark. So come all you Irish people all across the world, let's show them what we're made of, and as this freedom is unfurled. Dance this dance for freedom, barefoot if you're smart. As the beating drums go quiet, humanity plays its part. Close your eyes in silence with the joy and love you feel. Then with gentle beating feet, you bless the earth for real.